I also learned that every rule at the university can have an exception made to it. Okay? Relationships. It's all about relationships. Okay? Understanding how to make a bomb also let us understand how to make a nuclear power plant. The ability to understand how to manipulate the strong force, right, has also led to tremendous vitality in our world. 20% of our electricity is made by nuclear power. And if you want, in France, it's 85, 90%. If you want a system that can make energy that doesn't affect global warming, nuclear fission power is for you, all right? I mean, this could be the thing, you know, that has already helped the world dramatically and can in the future.
So much of what you've done has been because of how good you have become in selling, which you said you learned it from your father. Your father, by himself, it's quite a visionary. And in the 70s, he was thinking about moon, Mars.
60s.
He had 60s, okay, even better. He even had I believe the first patent, like the moon patent to be used.
Yeah.
And he even started the National Space
Society
with von Braun, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, and Arthur Clarke.
There you go.
Okay.
And he passed away in 2004.
Right.
What do you admire about him? What do you miss?
Oh, I miss him. I really miss my father. I think the biggest thing that I learned, and the thing that I really, really appreciate, is he always had a positive attitude. He could always be can-do. A couple times, because he was an entrepreneur, a couple times in our life, we lost like all the money, all right? And it's like, wow, what do we still have? Okay, well, how can we make a business out of that? How can we start this? How can we do those things? And there was never a defeatist attitude, right? It always was, okay, we are now this is going to work. We're going to create this. We're going to do these things. And that is an enormous trait that I try to emulate.
You said that, he would always compare you to a football player because, he also had a similar physique.
Okay.
And he would always take you around to, like different conferences. And at one point, he said that he would always take you around and you will always be around like famous physicists and things like that. Do you think that had an effect in the career that you ended up choosing?
Well, so my dad was a science writer.
Correct.
Okay. I mean, sure, he had an invention here and there, but the real key is he had a magazine publishing company. He wrote about science, popularized science, was persuasive about like going to the moon, things like that. And in this process, of course, because he has to talk to a lot of scientists to find things to write about, right? We had that type of environment around, and I learned that. And I think early on, I figured I wanted to be a scientist, not write about it, right? Different kind of skill set. So I think very early on in my life, I knew I was going to do something to create science. At least I was going to try.
So tell me more about your upbringing. What sort of things were you like? What were you like as a kid? What were you, thinking about? Obviously, he like your dad. He loved
and my
you.
mom
And your mom. So
right. So I grew up in northern Indiana, right on Lake Michigan. Okay, and I'm an only child, and my mom didn't have me until she was 30, right, which is highly unusual for the 1950s. Right. But she had a college degree. She had a career. They were both journalism majors. They were working and trying to build things up and so forth. Right. So I think an interesting thing in all of my life was you had discussions about, our business or the next projects we're going to do or these things over the dinner table. And it was just the three of us. Right. And that was kind of, it wasn't that they needed my opinion or something, but, I was always aware of what my dad was working towards next and what we were doing and why. And that was a really interesting upbringing. We lived on the beach of Lake Michigan, which is now a national park. So I was always in the water, had a sailboat, had a motorboat. If I wanted to keep the motorboat running, I had to learn how to fix the engine, right? Experimental stuff. And so I really enjoyed the water in that environment. So I think I also saw the adversity of starting businesses and some of them failing and starting other things, right? And that up and down. And I think that for a long time took away my desire to be an entrepreneur. Okay. Seeing that instability there. Now, later in life, I've helped start companies and I've invested in them and things like that. But I also have a really nice job at the university too, right? So it's not like, I'm going to quit my job and go put everything into starting this company. All right. I'll have my students start and I'll put a little cash in, a little of my ideas and time, while I'm still doing my primary job.
So why this job though? Like you've been here for a couple of decades.
Yeah, 39 years as a professor.
Graduated in 1984, yeah.
Yeah.
So what has kept you here?
It's a really good place. Okay. When I came in 84, I sort of had the thought that, I'm going to maybe move into politics at some point, or maybe politics within the university, become department head, dean, maybe president someplace. I learned that to do that quickly, you really have to change from one university to another. Okay. And I had opportunities along the way. And when it came down to it, it was, okay, if I want to go to University X to be department head, that means I'm not going to be able to do as much of my own research and teaching, which I love, because I'll be more of an administrator. Okay. And then when you think about it, I said, I really like this other stuff, right? Okay, so I'll pass up that opportunity. Years go on and there's an opportunity to be dean someplace, right? And still, I'd have to give up all these things. I wouldn't be able to do this. I'd have to move. Maybe the university is not as tops. I mean, I look at Illinois and engineering as one of the top 5 schools in the world, practically. Okay, these are still good schools I was talking about. So I'd stay, grow my research enterprises more, grow my different things, work with my students who have started up companies. And then finally, let's say 5 to 10 years ago, there was the opportunities to move up inside the university, right? So I don't have to move, but I still have to give up other stuff. And I was still convinced, oh yes, I want to do this. I've always wanted to do this. Oh good, I finally can do it here. I don't have to move. I don't have to change my house, all that good stuff. And I remember the first time it was the dean, and the next time this happened, it was the provost. It's a higher level position. And I remember him saying, Dave, we're not going to give you that job because you're too good at what you do. And it was a little hard to hear at first. Then I said, well, can I get paid like that other job? I said, well, we'll work on that, right? I said, what about all these good ideas? I want to do this, and do them anyway. Okay, that's how the Illinois Plasma Institute started. And in retrospect, I am so glad that those administrators said those things to me, right? I love the interacting with students. I love the teaching. I love the creating new knowledge, and the teaching. And I think I would be very frustrated with all of the administrative type duties that have to be done when you're an academic leader. I really appreciate, in fact, I appreciate my department head and my dean so much because they actually do all that stuff and they do it well, right? And that allows me to do the things evidently that I've grown to do well.
One of the things you mentioned when we talked earlier was that you started with one room when you came to this university, and now it spans 3 buildings. Right?
Yeah, so it's pretty cool.
what did it take to get there? What did you learn along the way? What did you have to sacrifice to get to that position of influence and just reach?
Yeah. So none of this happens in a, it's funny, I'm going to say in a vacuum. Of course, almost all my plasma processes happen in a vacuum. So, okay. I have been extremely fortunate to have such good students and postdocs working for me and with me. Okay. Really, really fortunate. And when you have that, then you learn about new things you can do, right? Plasmas can be applied to a number of different areas. Many people said, oh, you should just stay in fusion. I said, oh, I can use this same knowledge and apply it to semiconductors. Oh, you should just stay in that. No, I can use this knowledge to apply it to industrial processes, right? And it's taken longer to get recognized, I guess, as far as opposed to all your energy going into a small field. But these cross-fertilizations were extremely valuable in being able to come up with new technologies and ideas. So the expansion, basically, if you can bring in funds, then you can hire graduate students, right? Graduate students get paid to go to grad school, and because we want the best people. And you, being an experimentalist, I need stuff, right? I need lab equipment. That costs money. So you write grants, or you eventually convince a company to give you money, not out of the goodness of their heart, but because they think you can do a better job, that you can do something useful for them. So you get this, and I was really lucky along the way. My first postdoc, was Brian Ruzic, and he's the CEO of Starfire now. And also another grad student in the department, Robert Stubbers, who both Brian and Robert started Starfire together, and they both worked for me. Robert was phenomenal in the lab. He made everything work. And Brian's good in the lab too. And Brian was a phenomenal salesman, although Robert's a good salesman too. I mean, it's just different specialties, right? CEO and CTO, right? And while Brian worked with me as a postdoc, we got like this first big Semitech grant, right? I had someone pushing, and so all of a sudden I'm going from a group of 5 grad students, which is sort of typical, to 10 grad students and a postdoc, right? And then, of course, he leaves and continues on his company, but now I'm left with this bigger group. I get more people in, I get more good people in. And then that kind of propels you to another size. And then you do a few things that really work. And then you can develop more partnerships, and then more people notice your work, and then you can go after larger companies. Also, my graduate students that I had graduated over time, have still all been my really good friends. And as they rose up in various companies, it isn't that they could fund me, but they could get me an appointment with a person who could decide to fund me, right? So trying to get Intel to fund my research at one point, you got to talk to someone high enough in Intel that actually can make a decision. Should we put money at the University of Illinois, right? Well, you just come off the street. It's really hard to get that meeting with that person, right? Or build up the trust and so forth. But you have a student that's been working there for 10 years, that's risen up a bit, and that knows how the structure works and know where the opportunity is and who you talk and what they need. Then you can go and have that meeting and convince Intel that indeed it's in their best interest to fund work here at the University of Illinois. So through the contacts of people and through having really good people is how it gradually expanded. And then just in these last few years, it's really taken off, which is very exciting. You also asked what I had to sacrifice, okay? I only have so many hours in the day. So what I've sacrificed is not being able to be in the lab very often, shoulder to shoulder with the student, right? In the beginning, I'm in the lab as much as they are, right? I'm a young assistant professor, it's 2 students and me, and we're trying to do things, right? Now, I'm lucky. I get called in when everything either is working or everything doesn't work, right? Okay. And so I missed the opportunity to actually be working myself on it. That's probably the trade-off when your group grows really big.
So tell me about what you've learned about working inside a system. That, both of us, we've been here for almost 3 years now, 3 years.
Right.
And we always have projects and ideas. And it's a big system with inefficiencies as any system.
Right.
And, talking to the right person, finding the right people. Like you said, like once you start to get the meeting at Intel, it's like, who do you talk to? Like, who's the right person? Like the right department.
That's right.
What can you tell us about how to work within
the University
systems?
of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign,
Yeah.
or anything, right?
Any system, yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, relationships. It's all about relationships. Okay. There are a number of service structures that I need. I need a really good person in the business office. I need a really good person that does travel reimbursements. I need a really good person that negotiates the contracts, right? I need really good people that work on the intellectual property side, right? These are all university staff people. And I think what I learned along the way is you really want to engage the staff people to not, treat them as someone, that's just your job, go do it, but rather as a partner in the enterprise. So whenever a new staff brief, I have them come to my lab, I show them all the cool things we're doing, why we're doing it, right? And I continue that, and I really recognize the value that the staff really provides to the enterprise, of why we need them and why it's important. And then you get people that are helping you get this stuff done, that, really believe that you're trying to do, the right stuff, and that you value their contributions. And so I think that's a real importance as it's time and a place is build those relationships and value that staff. And also with your colleagues, the other professors, right? The younger professors, the students. And then being here 39 years, I know a lot of people. At this point in my career, a lot of them are retired, right, or moving on, but then you meet the younger people, right? And you can work it that way. I also learned that every rule at the university can have an exception made to it, okay? If you go high enough up the system or are willing to work within the system to do it too. It's very hard for students, but I want to try to make some new structure between companies and the university. It hasn't been done before. Oh, your first answers are, you can't do that because of this, can't do that because of this. And then you find out, well, you can if you get everyone on board with why we're doing it, and then you can create a new structure to do it.
Something that I admire about what you have achieved is creating a system where people who initially did not care about what you do have started to care about what you're doing now, right? Like you have made them believe and care about what you believe in, right? So how do you do that? How can you make someone you do not know, have never met in your life, start believing in something that you care about?
Right. Well, first you have to be pretty careful to pick the things that you care about, okay? I'm talking about science, not people, right? Okay. So let's use the example of fusion energy. I started in graduate school working on the area of fusion where the plasma hits the wall. And my advisor was convinced that this ultimately will be the key thing that'll make fusion work or not. Now we fast forward 20 years, right? And I have been working for some time in this interaction of plasma with the wall. And the rest of the world is understanding more and more. As we've figured out how to make the core plasma actually make fusion, now the question is, how can you actually turn this into a useful tool that can affordably make fusion energy. And it's all going to come down, as my advisor had once said, to the interaction with the wall. Can't melt the walls, right? And you have to transfer the power, and it can't contaminate the plasma. So understanding that this is a key condition, right? You can usually, like I just did now, explain that that's a key thing. And then the solution that we have, and we're not the only ones, is to use flowing molten lithium on the wall, all right? And so you have to have a good way to explain to somebody why that should work, right? And, I don't know if you want to take the time, but I could explain that. And if I do, then people say, wow, that makes sense, right? Okay, so you have now demonstrated how fusion can be much cheaper if you do this thing and how it's likely to work better. So now you have sort of an ally that says, yes, that makes sense that we should go down that route, right? So if you have good ideas and you can explain them to others, then they'll agree that they're good ideas too, and then they'll help you work towards making it happen.
Is that something that you can also apply as a teacher for students? Because as students attending your class, right? Mm-hmm. What did it look like when you started? Because I'm sure you didn't have as many theatrics as you do now, right? So
that's right.
How did you converge to this state of teaching where you found that showing students, like having small explosions in the class,
right,
is the way for them to start caring about the science that you work on?
Right. So I did this intentionally. I had always thought one of the beauties of being a professor was I can go and sit in any class and I can learn all sorts of cool stuff, right? I'd always thought this would be so cool to do. Then, of course, the realities of a given day takes place. And am I really going to take Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 3? Am I really going to truck across campus to go sit in some class because I want to learn something interesting, right? When you're trying to get tenure and you're trying to, do the right thing for your students and you're trying to prepare your next lectures. I mean, it's a really busy job, really. But I really wanted to do that. And I also really wanted to learn how to become a better teacher. So what I did is I recognized right after I teach, that next hour, I'm usually not good for a whole much, right? Because I've really poured everything into my class. And I'm already on campus, away from my office. So then I started looking in the this wasn't online at this point, right? But in the pamphlets of courses being taught. What courses are immediately after my course, somewhere on the quad, all right? Tons of them, right? If I taught Monday, Wednesday at 2, there's a bunch of courses Monday, Wednesday at 3. Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 3. And then, even back then in the 80s, the newspaper published the incomplete list of teachers rated excellent by their students, okay? And then there's a little asterisk for the ones that are in the top 10%. So I took that list of all these different classes that were right after mine, cross-correlated that by hand with the ones that the professors had asterisks by their names, right? And said, aha! An English class on Alfred Hitchcock films, okay? And it's taught by this really good person. Okay, I'll go and ask if I can sit in that person's class. Another semester, it was a sociology class, a revolution and riot, right? Another time it was an anthropology class, something about human behavior. I think about 7 times I did that. And I went, and I didn't do the homework, and I didn't do the reading. I did watch the movies. All right. Okay. And I observed, learned something cool, but really I was observing how the person went about teaching, how they engaged the students. And then I tried to pick up those things.
And what were they?
It's hard to remember a specific lesson from a specific class.
Right.
But over time, I've certainly developed good teaching techniques, right?
So let's say, how did you start? Let's start with that, and then we compare what you do today, and then we can piece along.
Yeah.
Because I can tell you, when we started, this place did not look as fancy as it does right now. It was a black screen,
There we go.
one camera,
Right.
barely any light, and it's two people.
Well,
Yeah, and like to start in one aspect of what you do, which I highly appreciate, that no one does, is that you have this appreciation for theatrics, to put it in a certain way.
Yeah.
I saw a video from a couple years ago.
Okay.
You were entering a classroom, and then someone had to blow something up.
Yes.
Energy.
I like to improve in a puff of smoke. Right.
You know, like that first interaction, that
Yes.
first class. That's my professor.
Yes.
Wow. Like this is what college is about. Do they?
Yes.
Hello, syllabus week.
Yeah. So let me talk about the theatric part. Okay. So I created this class all about energy. I was first put in a 1 hour class that only nuclear engineering freshmen went to. And it was just about what is nuclear power, from a layperson perspective. And when I came here, I was a physicist. I knew nuclear power existed. I didn't really know a whole lot. Because I was hired here to do fusion. All right. Mm-hmm. So in the fission world, I had to learn a lot, right? And then I had to learn how to teach it. So you're doing this 1 hour class. And then I soon recognized any power source is going to have negatives. It's going to have positives. And only by comparing one energy source to another can you really explain why fission is good or bad, or this is good or bad, right? So then I proposed expanding this class to 3 hours and not just talking about nuclear, but talking about all of the energy sources. And that's how 101 was created. I also recognize that if you want people to take a class, it has to check off a box, right? So I had to make sure my class could get counted as a gen ed science elective, right? You guys are engineers, right? We have to take so many English and sociology and this and that. Well, the sociology majors of the world have to take so many physical science classes, right? To make sure that class counted. And then you needed a friendly name, and I got it cross-listed as Environmental Studies 101. A lot of people are very hesitant to take NPR, Nuclear Engineering 101, right? Okay. Okay, so I manage this. I have this group of people. They're non-science majors generally. This is their bit of science they're going to get. I really want them to learn these things. And then every day in class, fewer and fewer people show up. Okay. How do you solve that? Some people say, okay, we're going to have pop quizzes, or attendance is going to be 10% of your grade, or take attendance. But I think it's much better. Make people want to come to class.
Right.
Make class so fun and interesting, they want to come. Mm-hmm. All right? And that's where the theatrics started. That's where, if I was going to blow something up every day in class, they'd want to be there. I was simply trying to get people to come. Then, as I went along and I learned more the study of learning and teaching. Pedagogy. That's it. That word. Pedagogy. As I learned more about pedagogy, I also learned people have a interest break point. You get about 10 minutes, and then they're going to start wandering off into something else. If you can punctuate every 10 minutes by something exciting, or better yet, something they have to touch, right? When I do this, I like bringing in examples, like bringing physical objects. Teach about coal. Have you ever held a lump of coal in your hand? Well, pass this lump of coal around class, right? When all of a sudden your other senses are engaged, you're not just listening and maybe writing something down, right, and watching, but you also have to touch something, right? Smell it, right? You want to get other people's senses, and you want to interrupt that process so they don't fall asleep every 10 minutes, right? Or tune you out. Or these days, start looking at their phone. Mm-hmm. Okay. So part of then punctuating my lectures with explosions or with something that would engage everyone once again became the way to do that. Now, I don't do that when I'm teaching a 500 level course. Okay. Because there's a different motivation behind the graduate students who are there trying to learn the knowledge. But when you're teaching at 100 level of gen ed, where I have to be here because I have to get at least one science credit, right? That's where I had brought in the theatrics to try to get people to want to come to class. And only if they come to class can I teach them something, right? So
I saw a Reddit post from 2014, and someone asked, the question was, what are the best gen eds to take?
Yeah.
And then someone said, take David Ruzic's class because he literally makes an effort to blow something up in every lecture. So that's how literally they describe the class, and how they liked it so much that they were recommending it to other people.
Yeah. That was word of mouth was a key consideration to get people year after year. I loved it. I enjoyed that. I feel bad that I'm not teaching it, but I recognize there are other people who can, and the stuff I'm teaching now, there are not necessarily other people who can teach it. And I don't want to teach 2 classes every semester because I got a big research group, right? So I'm always thinking that. So when I started as a professor, I was 26. I was kind of the age of some of the grad students, right? You had some grad students older than me. And then I went through the period where I actually had my children in class, okay? Here, at least 4 out of 5 of them came here and they took 101. And then I always said, I got to keep teaching so that my grandchildren will be here. My oldest 2 grandchildren are 15. So in 3 years, I don't know if they're going to get in here if they want to come here, right? But that would be pretty cool. But, the thing is, even if I go emeritus, I can always come back and teach some stuff, right? So that would still be cool.
I saw on your Twitter that you brought your granddaughter, Katie, a couple of years ago to your class or something like that.
Well, when my daughter was in between husbands, she and Katie lived with us when she was like 2 and 3 years old.
Oh, wow.
Okay. And because Shelby was both working and going to school, that's her mom, my wife was watching, our granddaughter, Katie. And I had my knees replaced. Okay. That was 12 years ago. It's about right. Yeah, Katie's 15 now. Okay. So my wife had to drive me to class to work, right? Because I had both knees done at once. You can't drive for a while. All right. But I didn't want to not teach because I love teaching, right? Oh, you take 4 months off. I'm not going to do that, right? So Marilyn had to drive me to class, but she was also had to babysit, right? So she brought Katie to class. So yeah, Katie sat through that whole semester as a, 3-year-old pre-iPad days. It was pretty amazing.
Future physicist or not? What do you think?
No, I wish. I mean, she's a sophomore in high school, right? I think more interested in friends and things on her phone than necessarily science or other stuff. But who knows, right?
You need to bring back the theatrics. Yeah, so I think one of your kids only became a physicist, like only one out of the 5, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, well, I have two kids and then 3 step kids. Okay. But the step kids, from around 8 years old or so, right? They were there. My 2 boys, one's a lawyer, chief public defender in Virginia, and one's a physicist at Sandia, Albuquerque. And stepkids, the oldest one, Gavin, he's a computer programmer and now managing at, I forgot the name, a big company, doing all sorts of cool stuff. Stacia, got a sociology degree. She's working, she's helps volunteer and does some work at a school. Shelby is working in the office of FedEx now. She did get her degree and all that. So, yeah. So, I got one in the hard science, and he really is a physicist. I tried reading his papers, and I really recognize I'm an engineer at this point. Okay. So, it's good.
What would be the greatest scientific discovery imaginable,
According to you.
according to you? Yeah,
Greatest scientific discovery
that you can imaginable.
imaginable. Well, I used to say if you could do faster than light travel, but now I've learned enough and understand physics that there is no such thing. Because if you're going at the speed of light, you're infinitely close along everything in line with you. So, remember when there was this thing about cold fusion? Okay. And that was very exciting because as soon as I heard about it, I went to the lab and worked on something that, if that works, this should work. It didn't work, of course, right? And some of my students who worked with me at the time thought, man, that was a waste of time, okay? And I didn't look at it that way at all because there was this little glimmer of hope and thought that maybe this is amazing, right? We could make energy so easily and it would be just wonderful. So I think a great discovery would be, can you figure out a way to make abundant energy in a very easy manner? Probably not. But there is no, if you could harness nuclear or even chemical energy in some simpler or very approachable way, it could, I don't see a law of physics that say that can't happen, okay? And that type of invention could just unleash, solve all the world's problems if energy was super, super inexpensive and widely accessible. Probably something along that line. Now, the other would be in the field of biology, right? In medicine, if you could figure out how to stop aging, right? That would be a obviously really big plus.
Are you keeping up with the current research that is happening related to like longevity stuff?
Here and there.
Okay.
Right? And I'm 65, so you think about that more, right? So how do I keep my telomeres from falling off the end of my genes, right? So stuff like that.
You look like 30 or younger. So.
Yeah, right. Okay. Well, I do have 5 different joints made out of titanium, so.
Is it because of like accidents? Or?
No, I think I just have poor cartilage. My mom, who's 95, wonderful, also has 5 artificial joints. So I think I just inherited the cartilage that wears out a little faster.
So, but if your mom is 95, that means you have good genes. So.
Yeah, my dad died at 74, so, but I hope I favor my mother.
Yeah. What do you believe that other people think it's insane?
What do I believe that other people think?
Like other people haven't caught up to you.
Or something that you think is true, but you cannot prove to someone. Like, deep inside it's true, but.
That's the thing. If it can't be proven to someone, it probably can't be proven to me, and therefore I wouldn't deeply.
Or an intuition, right? This is like some science intuition, some intuition about life, people.
Being an experimentalist, I'm pretty grounded in observables. Okay, there's tons of stuff I don't know, of course, right? But in terms of believing something that I can't prove or explain, that's hard. There's all the emotions, right? In love or religion or things like that. But, I would think there should be some physics that should unify gravity with, all the other forces, right? I think there should be some grand unified theory that does it all. Right, but I don't work on that specifically, right? So I don't know how close or far people are from doing it. But that doesn't keep me up at night either. Okay.
What does?
Oh, all those typical things that keep you up at night too. All these interpersonal stuff, right? So Although sometimes I'm so excited about some new science thing or something that we're doing, I just can't sleep because I want to get up and do it, right? So,
What would you describe as the most important problem in your field to be working on?
and I'm trying to work on those, actually. One is making fusion energy widespread and affordable, okay? In the semiconductor processing area, it's the way to continue Moore's law, right? So we can keep having more and more abilities in microelectronic chips and processes and all the things that comes with that at still, affordable prices. And I know that that is not a single invention. That's tons of people pushing a little here, pushing a little there, making one process a little better than another one. But I'm very excited and proud to be part of that, doing things towards it. I also have this great idea on how to make fertilizer without making CO2. Okay? 6%, I think, of the energy in the world right now goes into making fertilizer. And with that, it makes CO2. So it makes a huge amount of the CO2 in the atmosphere from that process. And so if you can make fertilizer and not make CO2, make solid carbon instead, which you could even use, I think that could be huge. And I have ideas on how to do it, and I'm trying to marshal resources to be able to work towards that.
The funding.
Yeah, I guess it comes down to the funding. It comes down to it comes down to trying it. And it's one of those things where I have a lot of different stuff going on. I'd like to spend more energy on that particular idea because I think it could be world changing, right? But I have all these other responsibilities going on at the same time, right? So, but I'm working. Stuff's in motion that could help see if an experiment that I'm envisioning could actually work.
So you've described yourself as an experimentalist, and you truly believe that. But you mentioned two things that I would love to get your thoughts on. As David Ruzic, the person, not necessarily the human. And Racing to a Cure, which is a book you may know about.
Yeah.
I think your dad wrote that. You, David, and other physicists, they were one of the few people that believe in God. Is that true still? If so, what do you make of that? Like, what's the role of that into what you do?
So, religion is personal, and the level to which I say I believe in God, and you might say you believe in God, might be a very different version of what you would call God, right? So the role that belief probably plays in my life is probably not enormous, except that the moral teachings, right, of being kind, right, of helping your neighbors, your people, help them achieve the things that they want. I think there's some guiding moral principles that can come from religion that do really, really well in setting you up in life. If nobody can really follow everything that Jesus would do, right? But you can try, right? Well, or pick another prophet, right? I mean, I think all religions have some really good aspects in them as well. And if you can aspire to be as good as those people's teachings, then that can be a way to guide you forward. So I think that's one of the things that I want to try to do good for the world, do good for other people around me, my friends, my family, And hopefully, you know, I find certainly fulfillment in that if it works.
Do you find certain aspects of nature or the universe to be forbidden in a way where it's so divine, it's so precious that it's better that we never
No,
find it
not
out?
at all. The opposite. I don't look at divinity or other things in that way. You know, I want to learn everything there is, right? If in terms of spirituality, you know, you could even say, well, this is just a function of how all my synapses are, and then when you self-process your thoughts about how it comes, and there's something unconscious beyond what is in there, and maybe you attribute that to spirituality or God or something like that. But you know, so if your vision of God is much more ephemeral as opposed to a old guy standing up someplace in a cloud, right? Then I'm not afraid to go look in clouds, right? Because I don't think, you know, I want to explore every bit of science, every bit of the world, every bit of the universe, every physical law we can push. No, nothing's off limits.
Because again, argument that can be made was or is about the Manhattan Project, right?
Mm-hmm.
And how that entire those 3 years, how they bringing out the strong nuclear force from the atom, like that feat in itself is something that I'm still like mind blown away to the day. And watching,
but keep in mind, there's a couple things. First, the sun does that all the time.
Right.
Okay. All right. And fission, right, is also a natural phenomena, right? The Ocala mines, you know, we had enough criticality of uranium a billion years ago to actually have, you know, nuclear chain reactions. Okay. So maybe because I'm older and closer to it, and, you know, have, you know, had relatives I spoke to a lot that went through the wars, right? Germany was working also on making a nuclear bomb, right? And Germany had rockets. We didn't have rockets. So Hitler was a really bad man, right? And if Germany had developed nuclear weapons before we did, the whole world would be totally different today, right? Maybe every Jew in the world had been killed, right? I mean, he had rockets. He was already raining rockets on London, right? Put a nuclear bomb on a rocket, you can't stop it in those days, right? So, you know, there was an imperative that we believe we were the good guys and Hitler was the bad guy and Stalin were the bad guys. Well, Stalin was on our side, but later he was a bad guy, right? And that was the same thought, right? That these are evil people that need to be stopped. Then there's no question. They have a nuclear weapon, we don't. War's over. Washington's destroyed. New York's destroyed. London's destroyed. Everywhere is destroyed. You're living under the rule of Nazism, right? So don't think, oh, we had something we should decide whether to unleash an atom or not. You want to preserve freedom, democracy, and a ethnic group of people. You can't make a nuclear bomb, okay? So. Yeah, I don't see anything wrong with that. I think it's, you know, war is terrible. I hope we never fight them and don't have to. Sometimes there are bad people who start them, right? I mean, Hitler invaded Poland and then France and other things. It wasn't like we went and did that, okay? So you can use technology because they're going to use it as well, right? And so as long as you believe that your side is on the more correct, the righter side, right? Then, and you believe the other side isn't, and hopefully through objective reasons, not just because they're a different religion or this or that, right? But real objective reason, like they're killing people in gas chambers, okay? You know, they're invading countries. They're you know, torturing people. I mean, you want to stop that. And if we can use science to do it, let's do it.
Does that ever make you think about the consequences of your achievements? Because that I watched Oppenheimer recently, right?
Yeah,
And
I haven't gotten to see that yet. I really like to.
you would enjoy it.
I'm sure. I'm sure.
And like, sure, the movie is called Oppenheimer, and
Mhm.
like it follows the Manhattan Project, but
Right.
the message is much deeper into that, right?
Yeah.
The message is about how troubled he was after he realized the consequences of his achievements, which is a very contradictory thing to say, right?
Yeah.
Like, how can your achievements have consequences? But
Well, I mean, the good thing is that since 45, people haven't been dropping nuclear weapons on each other. Okay. So there has been a way to not have widespread use of this technology in a military manner, right? Hopefully, because the world's leaders recognize also, and the people who put them there, that this is, taken to extremes, massively dangerous and wrong. But the ability to understand how to manipulate the strong force, right, has also led to tremendous vitality in our world. 20% of our electricity is made by nuclear power. And if you want, in France, it's 85, 90%. If you want a system that can make energy that doesn't affect global warming, nuclear fission power is for you. All right? I mean, this could be the thing, that has already helped the world dramatically and can in the future. So understanding how to make a bomb also let us understand how to make a nuclear power plant. So I wouldn't say, oh, this was so terrible they did this. It also managed to, and we managed to get it before, I think, everyone in the world probably now agrees was a bad guy like Hitler. Okay.
And even that achievement of creating a system and then actually getting it to work and organizing and aligning all the incentives to make it work as well. Also, as cool as the bomb and everything was, that in itself, how we were able to align the whole country to make that happen, that's also quite.
Well, and remember, at the same time, we had the whole country being able to make tank after tank after tank and airplane after airplane after airplane, right? I mean, and rifle, right? We had the at the end of World War II, the United States was using half of the energy in the world. Okay, if you look at the percentage. Why? How? Well, because we mobilized and manufactured for the war effort to supply all of our allies. And with this amount of capacity and natural resources and people, right, and the willingness for people to work, right, Rosie the Riveter and everything else, right, to do these things, we were able to win the war not just because of creating a bomb, but create the aircraft carriers and the airplanes and the guns and everything else that allowed one to do that, right? The manufacturing base we built up because of World War II led us to be, a superpower and prosperous and a beacon of prosperity and light and hope to the world.
Yeah, the Japanese did not think that the Americans would get enough structure and enough organization to make that happen.
Right.
But it goes back to...
it seems like the ocean, they felt, was a big enough impediment that you're never going to get across it.
But that goes back to the idea that you always like to ask people, like, why don't you have the latest iPhone 5 years before? It's because we don't have the machine that makes a machine, which is the idea of manufacturing.
Yes, it is.
Which is, people think about, design, prototyping, and all these things, but progress and the difference between actually making, a simple prototype and making a machine that makes a machine. It's the hard part and where progress really comes from. And the Manhattan Project is one example. What you're doing is also related to that. But it's such a underrated topic in our culture and how we see how we make things happen.
Yeah, I see that. And I shouldn't denigrate the other parts of making the chips. Sure. You need people that can still design the chip, right? And those are always getting better. And you have people that need to program it, and that's always getting better, right? You really need all these things. But I tend to favor at the base that you need the hardware, right? You need someone that can make the system. And you also need the organization. Moore's Law is a fascinating example in society that, there's no physical law that says this, right? But there's an economic engine that will propel things, and in the process, I think, make human life better. The fact that pretty much every person in the world has access to a cell phone, and therefore instant communication, and as that turns into a smartphone, meaning all the human knowledge at their fingertips, right, is astounding. You didn't have to run copper lines through all of Africa, right? You just needed some cell towers. So the infrastructure that allows microchips to continue to evolve and get better is deliberate. There's this thing called the ITRS roadmap, right? And it lists out all of the thousands of steps needed in this whole process and where you're at. And if you're going to the next node, because in 2 years we're going to be at this many chips per area, or transistor per area, and 2 more years we're going to be at this, and 2 more years we're going to be at this, right? So then you look at each technology that would mean to do this, and that map has areas that's white, and then yellow, and then red. Yellow is known solutions, but not at the level that they would need to be productive. And red is we don't know how. Okay? And of course, there's always going to be something yellow or red right there, and that's the next thing that has to be solved to get to the next one. But 5 years ago, that was also at that line, right? So people knew to invest resources to push those red brick walls further to the right on the chart. And so this organizational structure of this has allowed this to work because you can read this and see where are the problems going to be, okay? And therefore, what should my company's resources or my university, a university professor, what should they work on that is going to be the gating problem in some length of time? And hopefully you can now find the solution that does that. And it's not just one person, it's thousands and thousands of scientists and engineers and managers across the world doing this. And that's why Moore's Law is able to continue. And setting up that structure that shows where these problems are going to be is essential for this to all to have happened. And so you're right. So having a structure that allows you to know how to put and where to put the resources so the future things can work is extremely important.
Resource allocation, manufacturing, and everything that comes along those lines.
Yeah.
You said, so we talked about religion, and then we went on that topic, and then you also mentioned love. I'll give you a theory that I have. So love can be described as using nuclear terms. So fusion, it's when two atoms come together.
Okay.
So in the beginning, when two people come together, that's like one way to describe that, and you get a lot of energy.
Yeah.
Because of that, and then, but you also experience once a relationship ends, you also experience fission.
Okay.
When the atoms come apart.
Come apart. Okay.
And you also get a lot of energy with that involved. What have you learned about love in your 65 years of life?
Yeah.
From your
well, I've been married
kids.
twice, so you get some of that fusion and fission, and then of course you try to study. Hey, why did my first one not work out? What should I look towards the second? Of course, and then you meet someone, and all logic goes out the window anyway. But I think there's different phases. You read all these books. That phase one is you're romantically head over heels with each other, right? And then get to some other phases, and you actually want the phase where you're really, really comfortable with the other person, and you have shared interests and shared desires to do things together, and really good communication, right? I mean, those are the ultimate things that are going to allow a relationship to last and prosper, I think. But ultimately, the heart and hormones and everything else also gets in the way. So you may be able to coldly logical figure out how I should find what the perfect person should be for me. And then it's all going to go out the window when you actually meet somebody. And so, I don't study marriage, right? It's not my field. Okay. I've currently married for something on the order of 27 years. So that's great. First time was 15. I'm fully expecting the marriage I am going to last the rest of my life. Okay. And I'm sure it will. So I don't know. Emotions are difficult. I think one thing though is important to know. We are all human beings, and all the things that you're feeling when you're going through a breakup or you're upset because someone did or said this, other people have had all those feelings. Okay? And so it is useful, I think, to either read about it or certainly to talk to other people about it, right? Because you haven't gone through this all. You're not the only person in the world to ever have had this group of feelings. And when you know that's true, and you can build up a support structure of people who you can talk to, maybe your parents, right? Or maybe others, right? Friends, or books that talk to you about this and offer solutions. People who really do study this, right? I think that's a really useful aspect to help navigate the stuff, right? But this isn't my field, so.
But as a human, it is.
Well, sure. I'm giving you grandfatherly advice. You're not that far away in age from my grandchildren these days, right? I mean, my children are in their mid to late 30s, early 40s, so you're closer to my grandkids. So, okay.
What has that taught you about human behavior? Seeing such a wide spectrum of people or your life, what have you learned to be a constant in who we are?
I think everybody needs to be heard. They need to be validated. And I think they need to know people, care about them. Right. And so, I think hopefully that's kind of the key.
What advice would you have for young students like us and many others who are still trying to navigate their lives, still being overwhelmed with all the sensory inputs from all directions, and who want to do something meaningful? Well,
first, if you're here in school, learn. That's why you're here. That's your job. Learn stuff. Learn stuff from classes. Learn stuff from the activities that you choose to do, like what you guys are doing. You learn a ton, I'm sure, doing this. Learn from each other, right? Set up social support groups, set up friends that hopefully you'll have the rest of for your life. Make a conscious effort to absorb and learn things, right? And also, I have to say, while you're in college, I always had an old expression, I still believe it very much, and I'm going to have to go soon, so this might be a good way to end, and it's called work hard, play hard. All right? And I think this is a school of, especially in engineering, of overachievers. I think the number is 1 out of 3 students are their class valedictorian coming in engineering. I mean, all very bright. And so I think people certainly have demonstrated that capability to work hard. But you also have to do things you enjoy. You have to have fun. Now, if your work and your job is also fun, that's a big plus.
Right.
But still, you should do things for fun and should do things with other people. I think that means usually in person, although I've certainly seen when my grandchildren play Fortnite, okay, it's as much a social interaction as it is with them, because they form a team, right, with maybe their cousins in another state or their grandfather. I've even played with the grandkids in a squad of Fortnite, all right? And, I get killed and crushed very easily because I haven't practiced enough to be able to, build and shoot and everything at the same time. But the social interaction where you're all talking to each other, right, over the computer. So I can see how online things are also social, all right? So I'm not stick in the mud that said, oh, yeah, put down your phones, talk to each other. Okay. But you got to communicate with each other. Right. And I think those are the things. So work hard. You're here for a reason. But also play hard. Find fun activities you like to do and fun people you like to do them with.
What do you do to play hard?
Well, these days I really like to go to the beach with friends, my wife and others, and relax, floating in the water or things like that. I love to sail. But I also play conflict simulation games. Okay. Like there's the current series of games is based on Game of Thrones. You're one country. It's a team against another team. The people on my team are friends and former students of mine. A turn is due each week. So everyone sends in their turns and their computer runs it and then sends out the results. So it's not one of these things where you have to be all online at the same time. Right? Sometime during the week, you're going to put a few hours into this and figure out what your orders should be. Right. But you're going to send emails to your friends and say, hey, what tactics should we use here? Because it's an economic, military, strategy, and character game. It has all those different aspects. You have to build up your economy. You have to do these things, right? So I really enjoy that. And it's fun because it keeps me in touch with friends across the world, actually, who also play the game. And yet it's not, we all have to be online at the same time or something, right? Yeah. So it fits in, I have an extra hour before I go to bed at night. I can work on my game turn and figure out strategies and orders and send off some emails to friends and things like that.
At the end of our show, we have a section called Overrated and Underrated. So I'll give you a topic for a statement.
Just like they do on the screen in the basketball games, right?
Do they?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. You guys got to go get out a little more. Go to the basketball game.
So I'll give you a topic or statement, and you tell us what you think is overrated or underrated.
Okay.
So the first one, some people describe you as the Ken of UIUC.
The what?
You know Barbie?
Oh, the Ken.
Yeah, Ken. So underrated or overrated. So people just
you just like from appearance?
I don't know. Crazy people out there on the internet.
Is there an in-between thing? So it's not over or under? It's like, okay.
Okay.
I don't know. I have not seen the Barbie movie either.
Okay.
So I'm not sure if these days being Ken is a good thing or a bad thing. Okay.
Fair enough.
Okay.
All right. Next one.
Next.
In 2018, you were in Beverly Shores in Indiana to celebrate the 90th birthday
of my mother.
Of your mother.
Yes, her 95th is coming up in a couple of weeks.
Yeah. And in that day, you were playing the piano because, like your mom always made a point, force you to take lessons.
The best instrument.
So the piano, overrated or underrated?
The piano? I'm not very good at it. But I think the piano is a great instrument, so probably underrated. More people should do the piano, learn how to play piano.
Has music affected your life as a scientist?
No. I mean, I like rock and roll music, but sometimes I'll put it on. And not somehow, even though my mom, was involved in music, it was not a huge component of my life. Still isn't. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. A lot of people it is, and great. It's just it's not as a bigger component to me.
Next one.
Okay.
Surfing. Underrated or overrated?
Oh, I love surfing. I mean, I when I was on sabbatical in San Diego, I worked on surfing. I'm still not very good at it, but I love it. I absolutely love it. So I guess that means underrated, right? Okay. All right.
Crocs, underrated or overrated?
I love Crocs. Yeah, I'm not right now. I just saw they have Crocs that don't have holes in the side. So you could wear them and not get your socks wet. I can't wait to get some of them. Okay. So I love Crocs. So they're underrated.
How did that become a habit? Because, in every picture, every day, you'll always look
They are so comfortable. It's like wearing butter. Have you ever worn them?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wear Crocs. Yeah. But not outside. I usually just wear it.
Well, yeah, because your feet get wet.
Yeah.
Right. So, man, I think it just feels so good on my feet that when I have to put it on leather shoes, it's like I'm putting my feet in a torture chamber. So you get used to that too,
And especially after the knee replacement.
Yeah, and now I've had my ankle replaced, so my right foot still feels a little weird. But the Crocs are really soft and yeah. Yeah, and if my foot didn't get wet, I'd love it even more. And now maybe I can get Crocs without holes. And you know, these Crocs, they're leather on top. They kind of, if you look quick, they kind of look like real shoes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Perfect shoes. Yeah.
You should collaborate with Crocs, make a David Ruzic version. You know,
Yeah, right. Okay.
a nuclear Croc.
There we go. There we go. I don't think so, but it's okay. It's all right.
Let's say last one.
Yes, sir.
The Institute for Advanced Studies at Princeton.
Yeah. I've walked past it. I think it's cool that Einstein was there. Remember, I was a graduate student at Princeton, right? You know, we have a similar thing here on campus and other places where, you know, you collect scholars for a semester or somewhere else so they can concentrate on certain ideas and things like that. Doesn't work as well for people like me who are experimentalists, right? Because if all these great ideas, I go in the lab and try them out. Well,
Right.
I'm in some place where I'm allowed to think. Well, I want my think to happen. So probably overrated.
Yeah, there's been this effect described by Richard Hamming, where that, you know, people, you know, would get there and then they were expected to only work on big things, and then they just became, you know, not as effective as they were before they came to the institute. And then before we go,
Okay.
any questions from the audience? So yeah,
Will you come back again?
Sure. No, this was fun. You guys are really good at this. You are really good at this interviewing stuff. Okay. And you got a great environment. And I can't believe it's almost 6 and 2.5 or an hour and a half has gone by. I also have a feeling I looked at some of your things, like some of these are an hour and a half long. I can't believe anyone will listen to this whole thing except my mother. So Mom, I owe so much of what I have in my life from you and from my dad, and also from Marilyn, my wife, for the last 27 years, who has enabled me to do so much too. And my dad's passed away, but you other two might be the only people who listen to this whole thing. So thank you. Okay.
and that's where the charisma comes in. That you have the natural charisma that makes you who you are. But thank you so much for taking the time and coming and talking to us.
Okay.
It means a lot. Everything that you taught us today. So thank you so much.
Okay. Well, hey, thanks for inviting me, guys.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
It's always our pleasure.
All right.
Awesome.